how do I sign up for the Ironman Hawaii? And then I realized really quickly what I had to do. So I looked at the qualifying times and I was like, wow, that's certainly not where I'm at. But how do I get to that point? And so it just became really the size of that goal. I couldn't just keep looking at it and keep getting frustrated. I had to break it down into those incremental steps. So I just ultimately signed up for a sprint triathlon to happen in 6 months from that point. And so that was where I put my sights, and that's what I started training for. And then knowing that the full Ironman was on the distance that following March, I just kept scaling up to, okay, I did a sprint. Okay, that was great. I did an Olympic. That was great. And then, next one's a half Ironman. I do that. Great. I'm done with that. Now we're going to focus on that full. And I just kept on leveling up. And each time it would, just give me that sense of, okay, now I have another baseline to build on and that new foundation.
This is the Tom Roland Podcast. Fascinating stories to amaze, encourage, and inspire you in fishing, fitness, and the outdoors. And we're brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. I started this podcast as a way to connect with my friends, people that I admire and respect, and you. It has been a learning journey that's made me a better person, a better fisherman, a better father, and a better athlete. I'm so happy that you're on this journey with me, and I'd love to hear from you with show suggestions, guest suggestions, or questions. The best way to get a hold of me is through text. You can text 305-930-7346 for the fastest response. But if you prefer to email, you can send that to podcast@saltwaterexperience.com. That's a dedicated email address just for the show. If you like this show, you can show your support by posting about it on social media and tagging me. Text the link to a couple of friends that may also enjoy it, and subscribe and leave a 5-star review if you feel like I've earned it. The website is tomrolandpodcast.com, and that is where everything lives. All past shows, you can go and listen to any show. You can look up all the different shows that we've done, both the How To Tuesdays, the full links, and the Physical Fridays. They all live on tomrolandpodcast.com. And the social media is Tom_Roland, ROWLAND, on Instagram, or you can go to our big account, Saltwater_Experience. I hope to hear from you soon. So now let's get on to today's show.
I'm Adam Hill, and this is the Tom Roland Podcast.
All right, Adam, how are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on. This is awesome.
I appreciate it, man. I'm happy. Yeah. I'm interested in hearing your story. I've watched some video of you and what you've been able to accomplish and do in your life, especially recently, and it's very impressive, man. Very impressive. So,
Thank you.
What's your story?
Well, I come from a completely non-athletic background, and so I started out without. I did try ball sports, baseball in particular, and ended up as a second string bench warmer to a team that went 0-10, and really kind of got into music instead, and decided that was my path instead of athletics. I also grew up with a bit of an anxiety disorder that I didn't know I had, which then became a descent into a drinking problem that became much, much worse over time to manage that anxiety disorder. And over time, making a long story short, I did end up getting sober, which changed my mindset to a perspective of being able to do a lot of things that I didn't think that I would be able to accomplish before, which then got me into triathlon. And then I started, practicing a lot of discipline in that sport, and developing quite an adventure out of that.
and making it all the way to Kona, right?
Yeah, that was the dream of a lifetime and a thrill of a lifetime to achieve it.
Yeah, I mean that's really amazing. I mean, that is I've been on the course there, and when I went to Hawaii this summer, and I've watched the Ironman on TV, and I've seen it, and I'm like, man, we are on the course. Like, this is the road that they ride their bikes on, and it was just such a cool thing, and that's such an amazing race And it also such an amazing production, the way that they've done that over the time, where they bring in human interest stories. It's really one of the best produced athletic events, I think. And I think even their work, you see now in the NFL's doing similar things like that with bringing in these human interest stories, and all sports are doing that, because it just made, like, instead of just watching people swim, run, and bike, like you understood these people, and you understood that not all of them are like these professional athletes. Like, a lot of these people are just like you and me, or even like a couple of years ago were in a whole different place in their life, like just like you. And it's such a cool thing. I really, that's one of the things I like most about triathlon is the production of that Ironman event.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That was the first thing that brought me into the sport, was that seed that was planted, maybe a 15 or 16 years ago, while I was still in the depths of anxiety and a drinking problem. I saw it on television, and I was so amazed and inspired by the stories that I saw, and of just normal people that they said doctors, lawyers, teachers, all these different kinds of people. And I was like, wow, that looks amazing. I would love to do that. And then the next thought that came into my head was, yeah, but you could never do that. And then never thought about it again until I did, when I was sober, and my mindset shifted. And, ultimately it was great, because there was just closing that cycle, about a decade later, and qualifying for Kona. I had a chance to meet some really great people, including the producer of those Ironman broadcasts, Eben Hathaway, who was just an amazing person and really created some amazing stories in that process.
Yeah. Over the years, he definitely has. It's really one of the better things on TV. So I'm interested in how the mindset changed. We talk a lot about mindset on this podcast, and in terms of accomplishing things that you didn't think that you could, or just throughout your whole life. Like, mindset is so important. The way that you think about something, the way that you whether you have confidence in it or not. And I'm just kind of interested, like, you were so definitive that when a while back, you just said, well, you could never do that. Like, you have this negative self-talk that's telling you can't do that. Now, how does that change? What changes that has you kind of even question, like, well, could I do that? Like, because that's the first step. Like, maybe I could, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. It's just that little spark of being able to break through that wall of I can't. And for me, it came, a year before I remembered that experience of watching the Ironman on television. I was a year sober at that point. So what happened to me was I reached a bottom in alcoholism that was so, was so bad for me that it forced me into a decision of, deciding that I was either going to continue down that path and end up in jail or dead or worse, or, turn my life around and go to AA, listen to some people that, knew what they were doing in sobriety. And again, at that point in time, with as hopeless as I felt with, anxiety and depression and all of these things, and a drinking problem I didn't think that I could stop. I just decided to completely let go and attend meetings every day and just start listening to people that had the experience in sobriety. And, just going through that experience of just doing what other people told me to do, getting sober and doing all of the right things to do that, and focusing 100% on that first. That showed me that when you can put enough focus and discipline into something, that you can make a major life change. And that's what led me down the path of a year later, when I had a year sober. I was always told in recovery rooms that, wait a year before you make any major life changes. And that always stuck with me, but I heard it as, once you hit a year, make major life changes. So my A-type just thought of that. I'm like, and whether by whatever it was that caused it, I don't know how it ended up in my head again, but I remembered that experience sitting on the couch watching the Ironman World Championship. And I remembered being inspired. And at that time, when I was a year sober, I was recovering from a shoulder surgery. So I was immobile, but my mindset was shifted into this point of being able to just slightly break through that wall and ask the question, well, what if instead of I can't, what if I try it? And so in the spirit of extreme accountability, which is one of the best methods for achieving anything you want to put your mind to, I put down the $750 and signed up for an Ironman to happen a year later without knowing how to do any of it, and decided to build the parachute on the way down.
Nice. I think that's so important to have something on the schedule, whether it's an Ironman or I remember when I was thinking about running my first marathon, and that was a lot of the advice that was given by Hal Higdon and Jeff Galloway and those other people like that of, man, sign up for the race. Just do it. Just sign up and put it on the calendar. And at least now you've made this major step towards doing something, towards committing to something. And that can be applied everywhere in life, of like making that commitment that this is what I'm going to do, whether you just tell people or you actually sign up for something, or more importantly, you plunk down some money that is non-refundable. And now you're like, okay, I've got pressure coming from a lot of different areas. I've told a bunch of people that I'm going to do this. I've put some money down, and right. Now if I don't do it, I'm going to lose money and I'm not going to look so good. And so you've created this kind of pressure for yourself. Was that good for you to have that? It was very good for me. And at least from internally and from the support system of my immediate family. Like, my wife is incredibly supportive. I could have never done anything like this unless she said, yeah, you should go for it. Because I told her thinking that she would say, no, you're crazy. You never done anything like that. Why would you think that? And I was expecting and hoping for her to say, yeah, no, just forget about that. But no, she said, no, you should do that. That's awesome. And I'm like, oh crap, now I have to do it. But so when you sign up for that, race, the first day, when you say, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to sign up for this race, what's your physical state at that point?
I was I was injured. I was just recovering from a shoulder surgery and of a torn labrum, which, the doctor told me that I wasn't allowed to run for 2 months. I couldn't swim for like 5 months, and that when he told me that didn't matter at that point, because I didn't do any of those things. But, once I had decided, I was still in a shoulder sling and thinking to myself, okay, well, how am I going to do this? So, from that standpoint, I was injured. But I was also unhealthy. I was not very active at that time because I was going through recovery from a mental and spiritual standpoint. I didn't focus on my body. So a lot of that was just, I was still smoking cigarettes and, eating a lot of peanut M&Ms. So it wasn't a healthy lifestyle by any means. So I started with the nutrition aspect because that was the first thing that I could control. So I just immediately decided to be as simple and clean as possible, which was just eat whole, healthy foods, which made sense to me, and started walking. That was the first step. Did
you have any, were you reading any books or having any kind of nutritional kind of guidance at all, or did you just kind of jump into it yourself?
A little bit of both. So I pretty early on when I was researching, I fell upon a book called it was by Phil Maffetone, who wrote the book name is escaping me, but the Big Book of Endurance Training and Racing is the name of the book. And that's and Phil Maffetone's method is, very, very just whole foods, like just very simple, eat lots of vegetables, eat lots of fruits, eat higher fat diet so that you can, make yourself fat adapted. That stuff started resonating with me a lot. The idea of easy aerobic fitness and healthy, clean nutrition, because in the past I just heard all of the no pain, no gain stuff and, go hard or go home. And I just thought that was the way I had to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's why I continued to injure myself. But this philosophy really resonated with me. I found out that a lot of Ironman level triathletes succeeded with it. So I decided to, put all my chips into that basket and give that a try. So,
and it starts with walking.
That was one book.
It starts with walking. And so how much walking are you doing in the beginning?
Probably about 30 minutes a day just to get myself active. And that was all I was allowed. So if the doctor gave me a leeway to say, yeah, just walk for 30 minutes a day, I would do the full 30 minutes and started building up from there. And I think part of the thing that really motivated me to continue doing that was just this idea that on the horizon, I would be able to run. And I was getting excited about the idea of running and swimming and biking, things that I hadn't done. So I was just, chomping at the bit to do it by the time I could. And that was helpful too.
And so you're, I don't know if you're actually being accurate when you say you were not an athlete and had you done any running before this?
I did a little bit. I had suffered through at most a couple half marathons.
Okay.
And, had, maybe middle of the pack kind of person, just really weekend warrior, running when I could, not really plan. And that was really it. But the whole time I was, that was really in fits of fitness where I would still be drinking and smoking and things like that, which wasn't a healthy habits.
Yeah. So then you go and try to blow it all out with a 13-mile run. And
right.
yeah, I've seen that before. So, and then this pathway to starting to run, is it just from walking daily, and then you start how did you kind of transition into running and then into running the kind of distances that you need to be able to run to do an Ironman?
One of the things that really helped with that was the idea of running for time rather than distance, meaning run for 30 minutes instead of run for 3 miles, because everybody's 3 miles takes a different amount of time. And so that was a helpful one, because to me, running for 30 minutes sounds a lot more doable than running for 3 miles. Another thing was just the fact that I was forced to ease into it with easy training. I couldn't being injured and recovering from an injury, I couldn't allow my ego to get in the way of that and just say, I want to go run an 8-minute mile right now, because I wouldn't be able to. I would injure myself. And so I was forced to follow an easier method. And, following the Maffetone method, I was also had that governor of heart rate to train under a specific heart rate to meet a specific goal. So I found myself pretty quickly, gradually with consistency, gradually improving my paces under a heart rate. And as I recovered with my shoulder, as I began to increase the volume of training gradually, I got fitter, and I saw the benefits.
So how are you feeling at this point? How is the exercise, adding the exercise into your life, helping you to kind of deal with all the other things that you're going through, like the getting off the booze, and how is the exercise affecting your life?
It was an amazing supplement to sobriety. And the reason I call it a supplement is it's by no means a replacement. You can certainly go unhealthy addictions in many different ways.
Yes.
But, just the fact that I was able to get into this community and meet some great people that were focused on health and wellness, it just leveled up my energy. It leveled up my mental state. It leveled up my ability to realize what was possible in my life. So all of that stuff was just a flywheel that was spinning and helping to kind of propel me into this virtuous cycle of believing in myself, which was something that was completely opposite of what I used to be. A hopeless, drunk that didn't really, have any hope or belief in myself. And so this was a big sea change in that.
Yeah. So probably, so far we're painting this pretty rosy picture that you stop drinking, you go to a few classes, you start running, and everything seems to be better. But certainly along the way, there had to be some challenges and wondering, did you get yourself, what have I got myself into? I don't know if I can do this. Did you encounter, doubt in this process?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And even at the very beginning, it was very challenging for me to tell anybody. I mentioned that I told my wife and my very close inner circle, but I wouldn't even go beyond that. I didn't want to tell my parents I didn't want to tell anybody else because, I would be afraid of not them laughing at me necessarily, although that was a fear, and it was an irrational fear, but more so just them trying to protect me and say things like, maybe you should think, set your sights lower. Maybe Ironman isn't for you. And so I always had that self-doubt still ringing in my brain, telling me, maybe this is going to be hard, especially with the swimming. As a non-swimmer, really, I started life surfing in really easy shore break stuff, but never really venturing out swimming like past buoys and hundreds of yards offshore where sharks lived. It was scary to me. And that was always, and still is to this day, kind of an intimidating process. But, and so I did have a lot of self-doubt, a lot of setbacks of not reaching my goals. And it was a tough thing to get over, but,
when people have big dreams, often the most supportive people in your life, the most well-meaning, do exactly what you said. Try to protect you from that. Like, oh boy, that's a big dream. Maybe, are you sure you want to do that? And it's like the people that you're hoping to get the most support from are actually the most damaging in that they just want to protect you. They don't want to see you get hurt. And it usually is like parents, sisters, brothers, I don't know, people that are really, really close to you. What kind of advice do you give people after going through this yourself, like about that, whether it's that they want to do an Ironman or run a marathon or open a new business or quit their job and start something, because a lot of people are in that situation. It's like, do you just hold that in close, or do you talk to them, or does that doubt coming from your own family, for some people that's going to fuel people. Other people, it's going to damage them badly, So where do you sit with that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it helps certainly to know what motivates you. Mm-hmm. Like, if you get fueled by people telling you no, or you can't do that, then by all means tell the world, and go after it. But I would also say be very self-aware of the type of person you are. For me, I'm a hypersensitive person in a lot of ways. So I take a lot of that stuff personally. If somebody tells me you probably should, especially in that state, I might have taken that to heart. So I was very strategic about the way I told people. And maybe I was a little too strategic at that point because I really didn't trust the endurance community to embrace me, which was a mistake. That's another thing that I would encourage people to do is if you really want to pursue something, especially with social media now, there are encouraging and supportive communities out there that will help beginners to really get them to really get into the sport. I mean, with triathlon in particular, there are beginner triathlon groups on social media that have tens of thousands of people in them. There are Ironman communities, and I can tell you firsthand from those communities, if you really reach out and are vulnerable, people will welcome you in and help you through the process. I'm almost certain that every extreme adventure has that kind of support. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's what I would advise, is just looking for those communities.
Yeah. The community aspect of anything is great, but sometimes you don't have a community like this. A major part of this podcast is like being a fishing guide. Like that's what I was a fishing guide for a long time. And when you pull into a new area and you want to be a fishing guide, you're immediately being competitive to everyone else that's out there. And they, so in that situation, you shouldn't expect a welcome committee to welcome you to town and show you exactly what to do. And so, whether it's opening a new business or stepping into something like that, those are things that you have to expect. Like, okay, there's not going to be a welcome committee here. Nobody's going to be real happy to see me, and nobody's going to offer me any respect whatsoever until I prove myself, until I show them that I can, behave in the right way, and I'm not going to step on everybody's toes, and I'm not just going to come in here, guns blazing and try to recreate the wheel. It's like, a lot of times you have to just kind of expect that, and there's not going to be any help. But on the other hand, like in these situations, there's so many people that have done exactly what you did. Start from a physically incapable place of doing one of these things to a year later doing it, and maybe even, doing it at the highest level. It's pretty incredible. The physical transformation. I'm interested. So you started the running. At what point do you decide, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, there's two other parts to this. And I've only got like 5 months left, or I'm 5 months into this. Like, when do you start picking up the other skills?
Yeah, so I started as quickly as I could, as quickly as my injury would allow. Actually, the first thing I did after walking was get on a bike trainer, so a stationary bike, and started training on that. And really that was in my garage, and that was a comedy of errors in and of itself, because I hadn't reached out to anybody. I didn't know what I was doing. So I set up my bike on this trainer. I didn't even attach the flywheel to the back of the wheel. So I was just spinning in the air and thinking, this is so easy, effortless. But I had to learn a lot as I went. And the second part, when I did start swimming, that was a little later on. And again, that was a little more difficult, because I was getting over a significant fear there. The fear of just being out in the open water. You probably don't have that fear being a fishing guide and all that kind of stuff.
There's plenty. No, I know exactly what's under that water. There's a lot of things that will bite you under that water. Yeah, no, that's a significant fear. And my fear comes mostly when, I know about fish behavior, and when the water's clear, you don't really have a lot to worry about. I really don't think that a shark's going to attack you when the water's really super clear, or it would be a very rare occasion. When you're going to get bit is when the water's muddy and they are in with a bunch of bait fish, and you happen to be in there too. And it's very likely. That's why I think most shark encounters happen when they're less than 3 feet of water, because your whole silhouette's not in the water. They don't typically eat things that are as big as you, or even try things that are as big as you. But if they only see a foot of you, you're just like everything else, and they don't know what you are. And the way they don't have hands, they test things with their face, and it has a lot of teeth, But I don't like swimming in muddy water, and that's where, I think that's tough. And then, Sharks are they're funny creatures, because we're told by the movies and even by Shark Week that they like all this commotion and stuff like that, and you can attract them with all this. It's not that way when you're fishing for them. Like, they want the freshest chum. They don't like old stinky stuff. They want the freshest thing that smells just like a fresh kill. Then they want nice. They don't want any noise. You can scare the crap out of them by stomping on the bottom of the boat or slamming a hatch or something like that. And so many of the things that you see in the movies are just not true when you're actually fishing for them. And then when you actually target them, they're way harder to catch most times than you think they will be, But I don't know. Shark attacks are, they do happen, but I would think in an Ironman start where you have so many people going like that, I would think that would be the least chance, that you would have of ever having a shark attack, unless there was just one there and everybody swam over the top of it and it freaks and, does something. But, it would be a rarity. But it's a legitimate fear. I mean, you're where they are, and there's a chance. There's always a chance,
Yeah. Yeah. And
you're dressed like a seal.
Exactly. That's the thing. You always hear the statistics of, chances are greater that you're going to get hit by lightning than get attacked by a shark. But that's until you dress up like a seal and go into their environment.
Yeah.
Murky waters.
But the other thing is you're spending all your time outdoor training, except when you're riding your indoor trainer in your garage. So you have a pretty good chance of getting struck by lightning too.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
It's a dangerous sport. You got a good chance of getting hit by a car. I mean, that's really when I was running my marathons and I had the idea, I've never done an Ironman. I've done some triathlons, but I wanted to, I was like in really good marathon shape. And I thought, well, if I was always a good swimmer growing up. And if I just added in the bike, I think I could do this really well. And I was in the Florida Keys, and boy, the roads there are just so bad. And my wife has rarely asked me not to do anything, but she was like, man, I would really rather you not ride your bike on the roads in the Florida Keys. And it was probably a smart choice because, I mean, there's a lot of people down there on vacation, drinking beer, driving around, but absolutely. I mean, what about that? Is that a legitimate fear for you about getting hit on the bicycle?
Yeah, it's certainly a legitimate concern. And the reason being, you just look at the statistics. If there's 1 out of 100 negligent drivers out there and you're on a 5-hour bike ride, I mean, how many negligent drivers are you going to run into?
Right.
I mean, there's certainly that chance. And for me, fear is a weird thing. The anxiety is a weird thing. I get, and it's never rational, at least for me. The anxiety that I experience is always of the unknown. It's always of like, okay, I'm in murky waters. Chances are I won't get attacked by a shark, but what if a rogue wave comes? What if this happens? What if, it's all these what ifs that help get into a panic attack. And it comes down to this lack of control. And when I'm riding on the road, which actually isn't that frequent anymore because of those concerns, and just because it's safer to ride indoors, and, I get a better benefit and I can tolerate it really. I do a lot of my riding inside, but I think it's just the fact that the risk is right there in front of me now. And I know it's there and I can see it and I can, almost feel it, that it's not as anxiety inducing to me, which is a weird thing to say as someone with an anxiety disorder, but that's just it's how I experience it, which is, it's always the irrational things that cause the biggest havoc in my mind.
Is that what was happening when you were having before this big transformation, you're having all these anxiety attacks and things? Was that the beginning of it? Like just not knowing like something? I don't know. How would that occur for you when that was happening?
Yeah, it started, really the panic attacks started when I was in college. And before that, I didn't really know what it was, but it was just this kind of murmuring or under the surface kind of worry that would constantly. So I didn't know back in the 90s that I had an anxiety disorder or anxiety. We didn't really talk about that back then. And so when I got into college, the first panic attack I had was just that. It was this completely irrational fear of something that was totally not, something I should be worried about. I worried that because I was, because my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, because we hadn't been tested for HIV, I was worried that I had it, or I had this massive panic attack in such certainty. And it's ridiculous to even think that because there's just no reason to assume it. But I knew it with certainty just in my mind. And of course it didn't come to pass. And then the next thing that came up was just this fear of having cancer or things like that. And it wasn't just like this under the surface kind of fear. It was a legitimately paralyzing panic attack that left me like on the floor, frightened. How
do you get over that? Like when you think you have cancer and you're having panic attacks, I mean, do you go get checked out at the doctor? Like what's the process to get over that? Or does it just chill out after a little while, after the panic attack subsides? Like what do you do there?
It would kind of come in waves a little bit, but mostly it was still there as this sense of dread. And I did go see the doctor a couple of times. I got tested for HIV, for example, and came negative. And then there was immediate sense of relief for a few days until another panic attack, something replaced it. And then I would get, go to the dentist and say, I have some bumps in my mouth and I think it's cancer. They'd be like, no, it's not. And so I would get that little sense of relief. But yeah, it would always come back. So the one thing that I did, which is certainly not healthy, that immediately relieved it, was alcohol. So that's where, alcohol became a much bigger presence in my life for, the next decade.
So do you eventually replace alcohol with exercise? Is that what's going on here a little bit?
Well, without the recovery element, I never really replaced alcohol with anything. I just tried to add things to it. Mm-hmm. So I would try, 90-day fitness programs, or like you said, go out, a couple months before a marathon and start training for a half marathon or something like that, and push myself too hard and burn myself out while I was, still drinking. And I would have periods there where I would white knuckle sobriety, where I would just not drink for a period of a couple months or a period of time, just to show myself that maybe I could, and to get the heat off from family. But, eventually it would come back because I wasn't repairing the psychological aspects of why I was drinking.
And so the recovery groups help you with that the most, or is there another mechanism that helps you? Is it just introspection at some point of why you're drinking and how you get over that? Because that seems like just listening to your story, that seems like the major mindset shift is that you come to terms with why you were doing it, and then you can realize why you don't need to do that anymore, and then feel happy in the place where you are and start to thrive, right? And so how do you do that? How did that happen for you?
Yeah. So first it was definitely recovery groups and a lot of therapy. And that's the one thing that I'll say right now is we can never do these things alone, especially when we get into the states of hopelessness. We just can't do it alone, but there is help. And that's the message that I would, encourage everyone to share, whether it's a recovery program like AA or something else, and therapy, or, finding a confidant who is licensed to help with that. I had a therapist that I'd been working with while I was actively drinking, that was also with me in recovery. So she knows me very well in both scenarios. And in the first, few years of sobriety, I was going to AA pretty religiously for my own recovery. And what I found personally for myself, and this isn't true for everybody, but that part of my ability to help overcome my anxiety is to be more open and to share more openly what my story is, and hopefully help other people. It also holds me accountable to staying sober. Mm-hmm. So I found that putting anonymity aside for myself was helpful, and just sharing openly what I've been through.
Wow. And then, what kind of just struck me there is it's like, on the surface, it almost looks like maybe you replace, alcohol with exercise, and this is a kind of a coping mechanism. But then when you talk to you more and more, it's like, no, like you got to this place in your life to where you realized, man, I can do so much more, and this is something that I'd like to try. And as opposed to using it as a coping mechanism, it's like you're using it. This is just a new experience, right? And something that you end up liking probably way more than you even thought so, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've found in that process that, well, one important thing I'll step back on too, is that learning what my anxiety was, learning that I had it and giving it a name was equally important to starting that recovery process. Was like, okay, so this is a thing. This isn't just me being crazy. It's actually a thing. And I'm validated in that, and I can actually start moving forward and healing from it. And ultimately that the next level that came from that, with doing something like an Ironman, I realized even through that process that doing these little things to overcome fear, just to push past the comfort zone just a little bit, were almost antidotes to that anxiety as well, because they increase the elasticity of our comfort zone. And so adventure became this antidote for anxiety for me.
Wow. What other kind of adventures were you getting into?
Well, that was probably the biggest one. I had a pretty big focus on that, and pretty big goals there. So for a long time, that was the adventures that I got into. But even now, I kind of look at making sure that I try some new things. Like, I got back on skis recently here to try and do that, and found, wow, this is a little scary. I better, do it.
Yeah.
And, foil boarding, surfing, those kinds of things, help with that as well. just pushing a little bit beyond the comfort zone.
That's awesome. So you get in shape, you started riding your bike, you're swimming now. Did you start in a pool or in open water?
Yeah, I started in a pool. Yeah. Definitely. I was very scared of the open.
All right. So how does the graduation to Kona happen?
So it definitely started very gradually. And that's where a lot of the trouble with self-belief happened. You know, in that first year of just preparing for the first Ironman, I had it in my head that, man, I really want to do that Ironman World Championship, because that's the one in Hawaii.
Even before you try the first one, that you got your eyes set on that.
Absolutely. In fact, the very first thing I did when I realized I want to do an Ironman is I look up, how do I sign up for the Ironman Hawaii? And then I realized really quickly what I had to do. So I looked at the qualifying times and I was like, wow, that's, certainly not where I'm at, but how do I get to that point? And so it just became really the size of that goal. I couldn't just keep looking at it and keep getting frustrated. I had to break it down into those incremental steps. So I just ultimately signed up for a sprint triathlon to happen in, 6 months from that point. And so that was where I put my sights, and that's what I started training for. And then knowing that the full Ironman was in the distance that following March, I just kept scaling up to, okay, I did a sprint. Okay, that was great. I did an Olympic. That was great. And then, next one's a half Ironman. I do that. Great. I'm done with that. Now we're going to focus on that full. And I just kept on leveling up. And each time it would, just give me that sense of, okay, now I have another baseline to build on and that new foundation.
Wow.
Once I finished that first one, speaking about setbacks, you reach these plateaus, and I pretty quickly reached a plateau where I was probably about 10% off of where I needed to be to qualify for Kona. So, in that first race, I finished probably in the top third of the field. And I realized, well, maybe there's something to this. I did pretty well in my first one. Maybe I should see how well I can do. And then I started getting into the top 20 of my age group. And that's probably where I stayed for the next few races. And so it got a little frustrating to the point where I was not frustrating, but got to the point where I plateaued, and I'm like, well, maybe I should just take some time off and just reevaluate and just relook at this. And I know that just taking a step back is often what you need when you get a little burned out. But it was around that time, after my sixth Ironman, and I was starting to do pretty well and get up in the rankings, I learned about this casting for this show, this reality show called Ironman Quest for Kona, which my wife actually showed to me, because she's obviously my biggest cheerleader and all of this stuff. And she showed me, said, you should apply for that. And I'm like, okay. So I did. And we sent out an audition video and again, caught the attention of Evan Hathaway, who I'd mentioned earlier. And they cast me for the show. So then I had this added level of accountability where now I'm going to be on TV trying to qualify for this show. So, for this event. So that's when it kind of got a little real, and I started to really focus on the mindset aspect and gaining that additional 10%. And, I did more in terms of higher intensity stuff and got a little bit more surgical in how my training techniques could get that additional 10%, which is always the hardest to get. But I ended up finding it and pulling it out in that seventh race that I did.
Wow! So the time frame I'm interested in, between the time that you sign up for the first one and the time you do your seventh race, how many months, years? What is this we're talking about here?
Yeah, I did my first. So I made the decision to sign up for an Ironman in January of 2013. And I did my first Ironman in March of 2014. And then I qualified for Kona on July 28th or 29th of 2017.
Okay.
So it was about 4 years in time frame, or a little longer than 4 years, between my first race and my qualification.
And so what age group were you in at this point?
I was in the 35 to 39 age group
Competitive
when I
age group.
qualified.
That's competitive.
Yeah, very competitive.
So what are the qualifying times for Kona for that age group?
At Santa Rosa, which is where I qualified, my qualifying time was 9:29, and that was good enough for third place in my age group. And I think the winning time was somewhere just north of 9 hours. So yeah, I was right in the range there.
Yeah, that's great. Winning time of your age group or the winning time of the entire race?
Winning time of the age group.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember what the winning time of the race was, but yeah, it was something below 9 hours, which was pretty ridiculous.
This is pretty cool. Now, so you qualify for Kona, you're going, and then what's the time frame between that race that you qualify and the actual first time you go to Kona?
That was, so Kona happened in October of 2017.
Yeah.
So I guess that was about 4 months.
So you got 4 months.
Yeah.
And what do you do? What do you change in those 4 months when you know you've done this? And I guess, have they been filming you the whole time and they filmed you, qualifying?
They did. Yeah. So they filmed me up until I qualified. And then that was basically the show. They did a little bit of a follow-up that year in the Ironman broadcast, which was a great experience for me to actually see myself on that show that I'd once watched and told myself I could never do. So that was a thrill. But yeah, they basically through that process and it was about 3 months because it was July to October. My math is terrible. But through that time, I trained as normal and my goal for racing Kona was just to experience it and to finish it. So I obviously took it very conservatively. I didn't want to go out too aggressive and risk not finishing and just enjoy the whole experience. That's what I did.
Yeah. So what was it like when you, in those 4 months of preparation? Are you just trying not to get hurt? Or are you just trying to maintain your fitness? Like what's the mindset there?
Yeah, I was trying to maintain my fitness and do a lot of the same kind of training I was doing building up to Santa Rosa and stay healthy and uninjured. When I was cycling indoors and when I was running on the treadmill, I would constantly have those broadcasts of the Ironman World Championship on and watch them. And so that was really helpful, especially the swimming part, because the swimming part still terrified me. This was going to be a swim where I couldn't have the support of a wetsuit. I wouldn't have that buoyancy. I would have to swim, in the rough waters of Hawaii.
Now, had you swam, all the other swims you had been able to wear a wetsuit?
Yes.
And so this is going to be the first time you're going no wetsuit.
That's correct. Yeah.
And there's a significant difference between the wetsuit and no wetsuit, right?
Yeah, there is in buoyancy. Yeah. Fortunately, with the salt water helps, but I stand corrected. I did have one race in Texas where it was non-wetsuit, and that I did have a panic attack on that swim. It was a tough one to get through, and I was a lot slower, but yeah, it's a big difference, and there's a lot more comfort with wetsuit. That's for sure.
Yeah. And, so you're just staying uninjured. You're not changing much. And then tell me about what it's like, when you get there. I don't know. You're probably checking into the hotel. You're seeing all these other people, maybe even some world-class people that you recognize. Everybody's got their bikes and their gear and everything. You can spot people from a mile away that they're here for the same reason you are. What is that like? And you had told yourself you were never going to be able to do it. Now you've accomplished this thing and you're actually there. Do you feel like you maybe ought to get back on the airplane and go home? Did you ever have that thought? I was just listening to, there's this UFC fighter and he's one of the greatest of all time. His name is Henry Cejudo, and he was an Olympic champion. And that's what he said. He said, he finally made the Olympic team. He got to the Olympics. He gets there. He looks around and he's like, oh my God, I need to get back on the plane right now, immediately, and go home. And he won the gold medal in those Olympics. But that was, even at that level, there is this self-doubt that can creep in and probably I mean, especially at that level, I guess, like those people aren't immune to it. They're not immune to it at all. And he literally wanted to get back on the plane and go home, even after working his whole life to get to these Olympics. And that's what he thought. And then he managed to overcome that. He ends up winning. Then he goes on to be a multiple time UFC champion. But again, it's like, it's the way that you're perceiving this situation and your mindset going into it that can dictate even whether you step out onto the mat or you get on or you jump in the water for the swim or whatever. So what was that like for you? Were you just super excited about this situation, or did you have doubt? Like, do I really belong here? Or like, what did you think?
It was a week full of doubt. Let me tell you, I never wanted to jump on the plane and go home. That's for sure. But I mean, it was simultaneously the most thrilling and frightening time of my life. Because I was just like, I can't believe that I'm here. I can't believe that I'm actually watching or seeing all these people. The last time that I was in Kona, in that very spot, staying at the Royal Kona Hotel, which was the scenic outlook, was a period of time many years before where I'd actually had a few months of sobriety, and I decided to break my sobriety at that hotel. And so it was very meaningful for me to finish what I'd started here and get through it, because I knew that just yards away from where I had broke my sobriety, I was about to participate in one of the, in one of the most defining sports in our world and events. And yeah, it was terrifying again, especially that idea of getting in the water, because every day that we were there, the water was, one day it was really choppy, really swelly and very, a lot of currents going around. And then the next day it would be completely calm and wonderful. And, it was just, what's it going to be? What's going to happen? And we made the mistake of booking a condo that was right on the water. And so the night before the race, I sat up all night listening to the waves crash against the rocks. And usually that would be the most amazing experience, just listening to the sound of crashing waves outside your condo. It was the most terrifying thing that night, just listening to that, saying, oh my gosh, it's going to be rough. It was raining. It was stormy outside, and it looked like it was going to be a really tough swim. But when we woke up the morning, all was calm. And it was just an amazing, beautiful day.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So when you're suiting up, it's just still excitement and just looking around like you can't believe you're there. Like that's such that type of a situation. I've had it happen a couple of times in my life where you've thought about this, you've visualized it, like you were doing exactly that. You were all the time that you're running on the treadmill and on your indoor trainer, you're watching this race and these repeats of this particular race. It's so ingrained in your mind, and now you're here, and it is like this moment where you're just like, I can't believe that I'm here. Like, this is surreal. That's exactly what it is. It's like this weird, but I'm sure that when the water hits you, you're like, oh, it's real. And somebody kicks you in the face, on the swim start, then it's real, Yeah. But that's super cool, man. And really, did that race go, as expected, and you just kind of took it easy and didn't have any troubles?
It did. Yeah. It went basically completely as expected. I got the royal treatment out there as far as, what you can expect from the island, which is a headwind both ways, on the bike, and, super clear water, and swimming around the body glide boat or the body glove boat, and riding up Hawaii with the winds going cross-side, going 50 miles an hour down the hill. Yeah, it was everything I could have hoped for. And then getting to the run and running through town. You run through town for about the first 10 miles. So you get a lot of amazing crowd support, and it's amazing. Then you go and you run back out to the lava fields, and you're alone for the next 16 miles. With racers next to you, of course, and aid stations, but really not a ton of spectator support. And so it's a lot of time to just think and reflect on it. And the whole time it's just like getting that finish line keeps you going. And then sadly, you're so exhausted by the time you get close to the finish line that it's, you remember bits and pieces, but every piece that I remember was just soaking in the finish line that I'd been watching for so long. And it was incredible. I mean, just that whole day, even setting up in transition was setting up around these pro athletes that I've been idolizing for so long, meeting all of the other media athletes, the ones that they were going to follow with cameras and stuff like that, and having the opportunity to have the car drive by me and film me while I'm doing it. It was the most amazing experience, and it demonstrated to me the power of what you just said, visualizing these things with certainty in your mind before they happen. And it was one of those few experiences in my life where I was able to just have this visualization of exactly what I wanted to have happen. I wanted to be that. Yeah. And then look back and say, that it happened. I can speak to the power of visualization from that standpoint. Yeah.
That's so awesome. So at this point you finished that. When was this race that you did? Your first one?
This was the first Ironman was in 2014. No,
that's Kona.
That was 2017.
So 2017. Yeah. So what's happened since then?
So since then, I've done a couple of more races, and I've really focused more on doing shorter distance things, because I've introspectively looked at myself and wondered, doing the work to get back to Kona and do all that kind of thing, is it really something that I want to achieve, or is it just something that would just give my ego a boost? Yeah, sure, and it would be exciting to do it, but at this point in time, I just haven't found the motivation to want to do that part again. I've wanted to, do something different. And so I've kind of turned my attention more toward coaching, more toward helping other people that, may want to get started in triathlon. I remember when I first got started, it was a comedy of errors. It was a lot of me trying to figure a lot of things out on my own, because I was just really embarrassed or really afraid to get started. And I want to try to build some platforms to help newcomers really get involved in the sport, who might want to try to elevate in that way. Have you done that? Have you built platforms like that? Like, what do you have? I do have a platform for beginner triathletes at Extra Life Fitness that helps in 12 weeks people who haven't had any experience with triathlon to get started and get to their first sprint triathlon. Nice. And I also do a little bit of coaching, but right now I also run a family business that's been taking a lot of my time as well. But yeah, what's that business? What is it? We're a 4th generation family environmental chemical company. Environmental chemicals, like what? Yeah. So what do you do? Like, what is it? Cleaning products, or what is it? Yeah, it's a lot of water treatment, sewage treatment, a lot of the things you don't want to think about after you turn on, or before you turn on the water and after you flush it. That's where our products go. Right. To help treat those products. So, yeah. Oh, well, we think about that a lot. We got a lot of water issues in the state of Florida. And, you do? Yeah, well, they get a lot of, it's been quite a few years here of algae blooms and stuff in the ocean. And so that's kind of close to the heart. And, of that, like most of what you do is water treatment. That's a big part of it. Yeah. We're also in the construction industries, different chemicals for different applications. Oh, that's cool. And those sorts of things. Yeah. And so, and all of that is, you say it's environmentally sound. Like, what are you using and replacing what with what to make it more friendly to the environment? So in a lot of ways, so there's different processes we put our products into. For example, we have we have products like ammonia that we use in industrial systems that help reduce NOx emissions, which obviously help prevent NOx from going into the environment. Additionally, for some of the refineries, we have products that help do that and make sure that what their emissions are much lower. And for applications like water treatment plants, we help to make sure that the water that's going out is clean. So we have products for that as well. And things of that nature. We've been doing it for a long time, about 99 years now. Wow. So it's a super cool business. And has it always been
like environmentally conscious, or has that been kind of like you see a need over the course of 99 years, like we need to help clean this up a little bit? Is that what happened, or is that the origin of the company?
The origin was really, we started out just more as a broker. That's how the business started, with a one-man broker riding his bike and making sales calls to a variety of places. And they got started in some laundry products and things, but evolving over time, we got into pool chemicals and different kinds of applications for flooring products that would go in some military ships and things like that in World War II. But over time, we evolved into more of the industrial applications where, they're required to meet emissions standards or things of that nature. And, we supply the products to help them do that and help them to run their processes more efficiently and effectively.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's great. That's great. So what are your big takeaways about this journey that we've talked about? Like you made a total life transformation, and you did it in your way. And there's plenty of other ways that people could accomplish kind of a similar thing. It doesn't have to be the exact way that you did, but when you look back on it, like what are the big takeaways that you have?
My biggest takeaway from this whole process is that if you have enough focus and discipline and you work consistently, that anything truly is possible. If I can get from where I was to where I have been, then you can really achieve anything that you want to put your mind to, as long as you're committed to it and practice it with discipline. And that's the biggest takeaway that I just want to, provide people, that there are periods in our lives, in all of our lives, where things may seem hopeless, may seem that we can't get past the hump, we can't get past the brick wall, or we can't get there. But there is always a tomorrow. And as long as we keep pushing towards that, and as long as we have the will and the willingness to push past it, that we can. And there's hope.
I love it. That's a great message.
Thanks.
Yeah. So where do you go from here? What are you planning on doing besides the coaching and all that we just talked about? But do you have any further plans out?
Yes. So my book, Shifting Gears, comes out in about a week. So Tuesday, February 8th. So nice. I'm just in the process of putting that out there and hopefully, getting in front of other people and speaking some more and sharing a little bit about this experience and giving people some ideas on how to get started in their own journey. Yeah. That's really what
tell me about the book a little bit. Is that kind of along the lines of what we've discussed, or is there more to what you share in the book?
Yeah, there's it primarily is the journey from, it shares my experience of dealing with an anxiety disorder as I was growing up, sharing a lot of the details and experiences with that. And then into my alcoholism and my recovery. And, I talk a lot about what happened there. And then, of course, the journey into triathlon. So it's broken up into those parts, into those different transformation. First, the psychological and spiritual transformation of recovery, and the physical transformation and life transformation that came with pursuing the Ironman.
Wow. Yeah. What kind of discipline did it take to write the book?
A lot. It actually took me 4 years.
So, I've always toyed around with the idea of writing a book, and I know that it's a pretty big bite to chew. Like, there's more to it than just writing. Did you have some help with writing the book, or like what was the process like for you?
So I wrote the first draft myself, and that took about a few years to do it, and that was just a process of writing, rewriting, rearranging, and making sure that I felt that it was my voice. And that was the most important thing to me, is that it was my voice coming out. I didn't want a ghostwriter or anything like that. But after that, I had no clue what I was doing, as far as how to publish, how to copy edit, or anything like that. So I did hire out a company to help me with that process. And just as we were talking about, community is so helpful with certain things. The community of writers and authors and some of these communities that are there to help, are very supportive. So that would be my suggestion. Anyone who wants to get started in that process is definitely find the help.
Yeah.
If I had to do it again, I would find it earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. So would you consider that like a publisher is who actually published your book?
I'm self-publishing, but kind of in a hybrid model.
Uh-huh.
So I'm getting the help of another company that's self-publishing it for me.
Right.
And the reason I went that way is that traditional publishing, I did try that route for a little bit and I investigated it. Again, I don't know anything about that industry, but for the type of story that I was offering, I felt that it was better to go down the self-publishing route and kind of control my story a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And so when the book comes out in a week or so, in a couple, so that would be like you said, February 8th. So this might come out just a little bit after that. But if people wanted to read this, where would they go?
So you can always find me on adamhilltry.com. That's adamhilltri.com. And I'll have a link to the book there, but it will be available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and all those ebook stores that you can find. Cool. We'll have a paperback and ebook.
Do you have audio?
Not yet, but I'm planning on it probably maybe.
You could read it yourself with your good mic that you have.
Yeah. Now I know how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't read it with the laptop mic. But right. Yeah, man, I think you would do really well with audio books because you'd probably have people that are walking and training for their triathlon and doing all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's when I listen to books and I listen to way more books than I read because I do a lot of driving too. But I love audio books. Yours would be a good one on audio.
Thanks.
You should just read it yourself.
Yeah, I'll definitely be doing that. Hopefully a few months down the line, give it another release too. And yeah, exciting.
Yeah. All right. Well, man, congratulations on everything. I mean, really just a remarkable transformation and now you're using that to help a lot of people and you're to be commended for that and honored for that. That's really good. Man, that Kona, that sounds amazing. That would be high on my list of things if I were to be able to qualify for something. I tried to qualify for the Boston Marathon and I missed it by 3 minutes in my age group. And it was really tough. It was a tough miss, but I probably learned more from that miss it took me many years to realize that I probably learned more from missing it by 3 minutes than I would have gained if I had just gone to Boston, which would have been pretty amazing. I would have loved to have run the Boston Marathon, but that miss was hard to swallow. But then I look back on it and my nutrition was all messed up and I could have easily made it. You know, I was in shape to make it, but I made some poor choices and really just didn't have my diet dialed in and had some gastrointestinal problems about 6 miles from the finish line, which caused me to go a lot slower than I needed to, or at least 3 minutes slower. But right. But you have those kind of disappointments. But you know, if you're introspective enough, you can learn probably more from those than even the wins. But I would have liked to have the win. I would have liked to have gone. Yeah. But Kona would be super awesome. That'd be so cool. And what an incredible place to have it. Just an awesome island. Beautiful everywhere. When I was there with my daughter this summer, we went all the way from Kona all the way up to the top of the mountain there. What is that? Annapurna? Is that what that is?
The Mauna Loa or Mauna Kea?
Mauna Kea. I don't know why I said Annapurna. But go all the way up there and then all the way down the other side and to the ocean on the other side. And it was one of the most incredible days ever. And I guess there's like 7 temperate zones in the world, and there's 6 of them represented on that island. And from one side to the top and to the other side, you experience all of them. Everything from, you know, that high mountain. It's just incredible. Hawaii that particular island is just like one of the world's true wonders, man. It's such a cool place. But anyway, I loved hearing your story, man. I loved hearing your story. And thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And if you guys want to read this book, I highly suggest it. I bet it's going to be really good. I'd like to read it. So anyway, thanks, Adam. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure and my honor. I appreciate it, Tom. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. See ya.